Okay, so that's what this, it just changes the yearly interest rate into a monthly interest rate. Then we entered years, and it really wants months. So it takes the number of years and it multiplies it. This is times 12, so we get the number of months. And then this part just simply calculates the future value and formats and displays the result. Okay, and we'll look at more examples of that soon. Now, in your exercise for this week, you're not going to be using float or int or really any of these looping mechanisms. You're really only going to be using input and print. And the way to do an exercise, don't start from scratch. Get a program that already works and just simply modify it. Okay. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Okay. So that's what all this does. Any question about that or about anything? Okay. So,
hi, how you doing?
Good.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I do have a quick, I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but I was just wondering, can we use Jupyter instead of using IDO?
No.
No.
And
Okay.
maybe. I don't know if it'll work. I don't know if everything will work for you. And at certain points, I'm not experienced with Jupyter. I had a similar question about Anaconda, and I wouldn't encourage you to do that. I know that Jupyter and Anaconda are actually more advanced than IDLE.
Okay.
But again, if something went wrong, I wouldn't be able to help you.
Okay.
You can try it. Sure, you can try it. And if you're comfortable with that environment and you don't encounter problems, that's great. But if you do, I'm not sure if I'll be able to help because I'm not that checked out on those.
Okay. So I do have a follow-up question then. I do have IDO on my laptop right now. I use Mac, and I'm not sure how to access it. Do I click on document or something like that?
Are you in a Mac?
Yes.
Gosh, again, sorry. I don't use a Mac and I don't know. Does anybody have a answer to her question? How do you get IDLE to work on a Mac? I would suggest going to Google. If you've got it successfully installed, I would go to Google and say, how do I run IDLE? Okay, maybe that'll help.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so this is just demonstrating a syntax error. We're going to get into debugging, but probably not until the fifth session. In debugging, of course, you just want to fix all the errors or bugs in the program. When you're testing a program and you try to compile it and run it, two different types of errors are likely to be detected. The first is a syntax error that occur because the Python coding rules have been violated. And this is an example of a syntax error. No, this isn't a syntax error. Let's see. This is the syntax. Yes, this is an invalid syntax. Here's the problem with this, right? The line before, you've got to balance all of the innie parentheses with the outer parentheses, and they left off. This is a syntax error. They violated coding rules. There should have been another parentheses here. Notice that it's flagging the problem right after the error. So it's saying invalid syntax, and it doesn't give you any more information. The little red thing, you always want to go to the preceding line to try and find the error. Okay, you can also get a runtime error, right? So syntax errors occur when you try to compile the program. It's like grammar in English, with periods and punctuation in English, not grammar, punctuation, where you have to use semicolons in certain places and commas in certain places. Well, the syntax of a program is very similar to that. There are rules that you have to find. And if you have a syntax error, when you try to run when you try to compile the program, you'll get an error. You can also have a runtime error. Runtime errors occur after the program has successfully compiled, and there's something wrong in the logic of your program. It doesn't do what you think it should do. Sometimes this is called an exception. We'll take a look at these later. Okay, so this is an exception, and the exception diagnostics are decent, right? And it's telling us the class of error. It's a name error. It encountered a variable in there that was year, but year was not defined. So these are pretty useful, and you can find the problem quickly by just reading the traceback message from the exception or runtime error. Okay, so Python again, case sensitive. This is the class of error. A name error is a particular class of an error. Okay, so let's go on. Here's the test scores program. I think we have this one as well. Let me pull this up. So let's run it first and then take a look at the code. And again, it runs in idle. It runs in the shell. So it says enter a test score. So we enter a test score, say 89. Enter another test score, we say 45. Enter a third test score, and this one will be 67. And that's all this program does. It accepts 3 separate test scores, adds them up to give you the total score, and then divides the total score by the number, which is 3, to give you the average score. And then it ends. That's what that program does. So take a look at it. And you notice, again, we begin with the shebang line. You should always put that as the first line. It's just best practices. Okay, and then notice again, the code is grouped into little blocks that do different things. And each block is preceded by a comment that explains a little bit about what's going on. Notice the welcome message is just a succession of print statements. That's all it is. And this print statement, you may not have noticed this, but let's go back and do the help. When you just say print with no arguments, it throws a line. Why does it do that? Well, let's go back and call up print. So we say help print. And the end, this is an argument to print that tells it, the function, what to do when it successfully executes. And the value for n is a new line character. Okay, so if I change, let's do this. Okay, so if we go into this, go back into this program, see if I can do this without. And we say, put it here, we'll put a comma, and I will change the default value for that argument. I will say end equals, I'll just put a space in there. I'll put a string with an empty character, right? So when this print function executes, I've changed the value of the end argument, which tells print what to do when it's finished, into, instead of throwing a line, just simply putting a space. So what this should do is it will, instead of printing this on the next line, it should print it right after it. So let's see if that works. So notice when I try to run it after I've edited it, it won't let me. You have to save it before you can run it again. So I say, okay. And sure enough, when I run it this time, instead of printing succession of equal marks after it, it prints it on the same line. Okay, right? So we changed the end. Let's put it back the way it was. We'll run it again. And now it works properly, right? Instead of enter 3 test scores and printing the next line on the same line, now it does it like this. Okay, so just so you know. Okay, what else can we say about this? Again, a couple of new things here, right? We're using input, and you'll do this in your exercise. We're using input to solicit input from the user. What the input function does is it prints this prompt to the user, but whatever the user types is what gets entered into the program. Okay, so total score will become some value that the user has entered. Okay, and again, note that since it's expecting test scores to be whole numbers, it's changing them into an int, right? In the previous program, we were changing monetary input, which is dollars and cents, into a float, because that's what you expect, $50.05, that's a float number, right? But if they're just entering a whole number test score, you want to change it to an integer. If you don't do that, the value that gets input will be a string, because that's the default value that input returns. Input will always return a string unless you tell it to change it to something else. Okay, now this is a bit more complicated. Okay, notice that we have initialized in this little block of code here, we've initialized this variable to be 0. Okay, and what we're doing in these subsequent 3 statements is we are adding, we are incrementing. This is the addition increment operator. It's a plus with an equal sign. And what that will do, total score equals 0 here. Whatever number the user enters will be added to total score. So if I enter a test score of 34, at that point, total score becomes 34. Okay, and then again, this next line does the same thing. If I enter, it asks the user for another test score. If I say 46, it adds 46 to 34. So total score now is 80, right? So this is just, we're using the same variable. We're just simply adding. It adds increments the total score by whatever is entered in each of these 3. So it's 80 there. And now if I say, in this one, I say test score is 40, total score becomes 120. Here, because the program knows we're only entering in 3 scores, to get the average, it is dividing, this is the divisor operand, dividing the current value of total score, which is 120 here, by 3. So that's going to be, it's going to be 40, which is a whole number, but it could be any fractional number. Okay, notice this, round. Round is another Python native function that does exactly what you think it does. It rounds the value, I think, to a default of 1 decimal. Here, let's take a look at this. Let's go back into the shell, and we'll say help, round, help is your friend. Okay. Number of digits, this is what it rounds it to. No, to a given precision in decimal digits. It's an integer, so in that case, it would just return 40. Okay. Excuse me. I'll be right back.